And artificial intelligence has just finished rebuilding the final 12 minutes of the USS Indianapolis. Every torpedo angle, every degree of list, every second of the night she rolled over, reconstructed from the broken warship lying on the floor of the Philippine Sea. And what the model revealed does not match the story the United States Navy told for half a century. Because the reconstruction did not just show how she sank, it showed that the men aboard her came within one order, one decision made by the enemy of dying in a way far worse than the one history recorded. We will get to that order. First, you need to understand what the Navy buried and how a machine finally dug it back up. 12 minutes. For decades, the official story was simple, and it had a villain. A captain failed to zigzag. A heavy cruiser was lost. The sea did the rest. One man's carelessness, the Navy said, had killed nearly 900 American sailors. That was the version printed in the record, repeated in the textbooks, and carved into the name of Captain Charles Butler McVay III for the rest of his life. But look at the ship that story was told about. The USS Indianapolis was a 610-foot Portland-class heavy cruiser, the flagship of the Fifth Fleet. She had carried President Franklin Roosevelt across the water. She had lived through the attack on Pearl Harbor. She had fought from the Aleutians to Iwo Jima to Okinawa, taken a kamikaze off her deck just 4 months earlier, and earned 10 battle stars. This was not an unlucky ship. This was one of the most decorated warships in the American fleet. And on her final voyage, she was carrying a secret so dangerous that her own captain was forbidden to know what it was. Welded to the deck of his cabin under armed Marine guard were the components of Little Boy, the atomic bomb bound for Hiroshima. She delivered it to the island of Tinian in a record-breaking run, alone, and then she was ordered onward to Leyte Gulf. Alone again. No escort, no sonar. Steaming at 17 knots straight through water where a Japanese submarine was already waiting. Every safeguard that should have protected those men was gone before the first torpedo was ever fired. The reconstruction shows exactly how gone. So what does it actually mean to rebuild a sinking? For 72 years, no one could because no one could find the ship. The Navy's own estimate of where she went down was off by nearly 40 miles. Then, in August of 2017, a research vessel funded by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, the RV Petrel, located the wreck 18,000 feet down on the floor of the Philippine Sea. 3.5 miles of black water, and the cameras brought back something the historians had never had before. Evidence. Sonar mapped the debris field. Remotely operated vehicles photographed every torn section of the hull. Photogrammetry stitched those thousands of images into a 3-dimensional model, and that model could be run backward. The Navy's own historian, Richard Holver, had already found a single forgotten log entry from a tank landing ship that passed the Indianapolis hours before she died, and used drift modeling to recompute where she actually sank. Now the wreckage let them reconstruct how. The machine did not care whose career it would end. It did not care what a court had decided in 1945. It cared only about the metal, and the metal told a different story. The first thing it revealed was about the attack itself, and it is the part almost no one knows. Just after midnight on the 30th of July, 1945, the Japanese submarine YAI-58 was running beneath the Philippine Sea. Her commander, Lieutenant Commander Hashimoto, having caught a target on his hydrophones, raised his periscope, and saw a warship perfectly silhouetted against the moon. No escort, no defense he could see. He thought he was looking at an American battleship. What he fired decided everything that followed. The Type 95 torpedo was the most advanced weapon of its kind in the world. It ran on pure oxygen, which meant it left no trail of bubbles, no wake, nothing for a lookout to catch in the dark. 6 of them slid out of the bow tubes in a fan. 2 found the starboard side of the Indianapolis. The men on watch never saw a thing. But here is the detail the official story always stepped around, the one the reconstruction of that submarine's patrol drags back into the light. I-58 was not only carrying chitin, manned suicide torpedoes, human-piloted weapons with a volunteer sealed alive inside, built to be steered directly into the hull of a ship and detonated on impact. There were 6 of them aboard. As he sighted the Indianapolis, he gave the order to prepare one. A young pilot, Petty Officer Shiraki Ichiro, was told to climb into his craft and wait to die. Then Hashimoto changed his mind. He judged that they would be unlikely to find the target in the darkness, and he reached for conventional torpedoes instead. Read that again, slowly. The men of the USS Indianapolis lived through the opening seconds of that attack, not because of anything the Navy did to protect them, but because of a decision made inside the head of the man who was trying to kill them. One wrong word would have ridden a warhead into their hull. They never knew how close it came. But it gets worse. Because surviving the first T reconstruction shows the ship was already doomed, in a way no captain on Earth could have stopped. If you want the rest of what the model found, take 1 second to subscribe, because what comes next is the part the Navy spent 50 years keeping buried. When the first torpedo struck, it hit the starboard bow and tore it clean off. We know that is not an exaggeration because the bow is not with the rest of the wreck. When Paul Allen's cameras mapped the ocean floor, they found the bow of the Indianapolis lying 1.5 miles from the masts, each weighing more than 100 tons, had broken away and come to rest 1/2 mile from the ship. The debris field does not describe a vessel that gently went under, it describes a ship that came apart. And here is the cruelest piece of physics in the entire disaster. The Indianapolis was still moving at 17 knots when her bow was torn away. With no bow left to part, the sea drove straight into the open wound of the hull, forcing thousands of tons of water inside with every second she kept moving. The engine room, cut off from the bridge, kept the screws turning, never knowing that every turn was dragging the ship down faster. The second torpedo had struck near the fuel tanks and the powder magazine keel. All electrical power was gone. The order to abandon ship could only travel as far as a man could shout it into the dark. 12 minutes. From the first explosion to the night air and the Indianapolis slid beneath the surface, only 12 minutes passed. Nearly 300 men went down with her, still inside. Now hold that against the charge. The Navy convicting him for failing to zigzag. But the reconstruction is brutally clear. A wakeless torpedo he could not see, fired by a commander who had already locked in his solution, struck a ship that came apart in 12 minutes. No zigzag pattern, no damage control party, no decision by any captain who ever lived could have changed it. That captain was innocent. The Navy would convict him anyway. We will get to how. But first, the survivors. Because the worst part of this story is not the sinking. It is what happened to the men who lived through it. Roughly 890 men were now in the open ocean. Every one of them assumed rescue was already on the way. Surely the distress call had gone out. Surely someone was coming. You have probably heard the story of what happened to that distress call. It is repeated in documentaries and books. 3 separate Navy shore stations received the Indianapolis distress call, and every one of them ignored it. One commander was drunk. One had left standing orders not to be disturbed. One assumed it was a Japanese trick. 3 chances to save them, all thrown away. It is a chilling story, and when naval historians went looking for the records to prove it, they found something more chilling still. They could not confirm it ever happened. Decades later, the Naval History and Heritage Command found no solid record of any station receiving and acting on that signal. The vivid tale of the drunk officer and the ignored alarm appears to be exactly that, a tale. So if no one ignored a cry for help, then why did no one come? The answer is worse than negligence. It was indifference built into the system itself. There was a standing order across the Pacific that the arrivals of combatant ships did not have to be reported. So when the Indianapolis failed to reach Leyte Gulf on the 31st of July, no alarm sounded anywhere because no one was watching for her. A 610-foot warship with nearly 1,200 men aboard slipped from the United States Navy's awareness, and not one person noticed she was gone. The men in the water were not victims of 3 officers who looked away. They were victims of a Navy in which no one was looking at all. and while the system failed even to miss them, the sea began to take them, one at a time. The first morning brought the sun, and the sun was an enemy. The water was warm, around 85 degrees, warm enough to feel survivable and warm enough to kill slowly. Under the tropical glare, the men began to dehydrate, and the salt water lapping at their mouths became the most dangerous temptation of all. Those who gave in and drank it were dead within hours, their kidneys shutting down, their minds sliding toward green islands that were not there. And then there were the fins. Oceanic whitetips, sensing the sinking and the blood of the wounded, gathered beneath the survivors and never left. At first they took the dead, then they took the living. Survivors describe men screaming and simply vanishing, pulled straight under into tight groups, because to drift to the edge or to float alone was to be chosen. Whether the sharks killed dozens or far more, no one will ever truly count. Most of the men who died out there died of thirst, of exposure, of simply letting go. As one survivor, a 19-year-old Marine named Edgar Harrell, put it, "You have to fight to live. To die is just give up." He watched a great many young men do exactly that. For 4 days it went on. 4 days of sun and no rescue, because no one knew to send one. And when rescue finally came, it came by pure accident. On the 2nd of August, a Navy pilot named Wilbur Gwynn was flying a routine patrol when he leaned down to fix a troublesome antenna and happened to glance at the ocean below. He saw a long slick of oil. He assumed it was a submarine. Then his second pilot, Adrian Marks, flew in behind him, and against direct orders, he set his flying boat down on the open swells and began hauling men out of the water, lashing them to the wings with cord until the aircraft could never fly again. Of the roughly 890 men who had gone into the sea, 316 came out looking for them. If he had glanced the other way, not one of them would have survived. You would think surviving all of that would be the end for Captain McVay. It was the start of a second one. Hundreds of American captains lost ships in the Second World War. Exactly one was court-martialed for it. Him. The Navy charged the man it had denied an escort, denied sonar, and denied the intelligence that a submarine sat on his route, and then failed to even notice his ship was missing. They zigzagged, and then they did something with no precedent in the history of the United States Navy. They brought the enemy to testify against one of their own. Mochitsura Hashimoto, the man who had fired the torpedoes, was flown to Washington and put on the stand. Even he told them the truth. Zigzagging, he said, would have made no difference. He would have sunk the Indianapolis no matter what she did. It did not matter. They convicted McVay anyway. His career survived on paper. His name did not. The families of the dead sent him letters for the rest of his life. One Christmas card read, "Our family's holiday would be a lot merrier if you had not killed my son." The letters never stopped coming. And in 1968, 23 years after his ship had gone through Pearl Harbor and Okinawa, and after the most important delivery of the entire war, Charles McVay walked out of his home and took his own life. He did not live to see the wreck found. He did know his ship had been split in two by a weapon he could never have seen or stopped. He did not live to see a 12-year-old boy named Hunter Scott turn a school history project into a congressional investigation, or to hear the United States Congress declare in the year 2000 that his conviction had been a miscarriage of justice. The proof that exonerated him had been sitting in 3.5 miles of darkness the entire time. The ocean had kept the evidence the Navy buried, and that is the part that should genuinely unsettle even the sharks. It is how long the truth was willing to wait. The Indianapolis did not sink because of one man's mistake. She sank because critical intelligence was classified, because a warship was sent out alone and unprotected, because no one was watching when she vanished, and because when the system failed nearly 900 men, no one looked in the mirror. Every safeguard that should have saved those sailors was absent, broken, or deliberately withheld. And the one man who tried to save them is the only man the Navy ever punished. It took a billionaire's research vessel, a camera 18,000 feet down, a forgotten log entry, a 12-year-old stubbornness, and finally, a machine that could rebuild the dead in 3 dimensions, just to say out loud what the survivors had known for 50 years. The official story was a lie. So here is the question worth sitting with tonight. If it took 72 years and the bottom of the ocean to surface the truth about one famous American warship, how many still lie down there in the dark, intact, and waiting for something patient enough to dig them up? If this is the kind of truth you want to keep public because the next discovery may be even bigger, and I want you here when it drops, then tell me in the comments. Do you believe the Navy scapegoated McVay to protect itself, or do you think there is still more here they have never admitted? And if the Indianapolis taught you that a wreck can keep a secret, wait until you see what a drone from the Bermuda Triangle reveals, because that is one more place the official story falls apart.